Hello, historians. Today we are going to be discussing women's rights a little bit. We finished up the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. We'll talk a little bit about how things have changed with women's rights in that same era. Um, if you remember back to you watch old movies or TV shows, the role of a woman in the 1940s and 50s was to stay at home, cook, clean, and take care of the kids. And that was supposed to be the role for most females. That all changes in 1963. A book comes out written by Betty Friedan called The Feminine Mystique. And basically, in this book, it basically details how women were not happy with that role. They wanted more. And women around the country started reading it, going, hey, this is how I feel. I don't like this role at just to be at home. I want more out of life. And so all of a sudden, things started to slowly change. Now, some women were happy with that role, and others wanted more. And so this book just said, you're not the only one. You're not the only person at home feeling like this. Other people around the country, other women around the country are also feeling this. And you look at like some of the ads. I pulled some of these old ads out. I think they're from the 50s or 60s. The chef does everything but cook. That's what wives are for. And here was the blender, the chef, I guess. Don't worry, darling, you didn't burn the beer. As you can see, she's burning the food. I courted an angel and married a cook. She can cook. You'll feel like a queen in your kitchen. It's a ad for a refrigerator. So you can see with just these ads, um, it is portraying the mother, the female that young girls are probably seeing this and saying, "Here's what you are going to grow up to be. This is your only option." Here's a vacuum cleaner ad. Christmas morning, she'll be happier with a Hoover. I'm sure that's what everybody wants to get for Christmas is a vacuum. Cigarette ad. Looks like a shirt ad. I'll have a couple video links. The Flintstone one is kind of cool to watch, or interesting, I guess. Now, this book discussed the lives of several housewives from around the United States who are unhappy despite living in material comfort and being married with children. And so this just showed women around the country and maybe around the world like this is other women are feeling uncomfortable living this way. A group starts a few years later called NOW, the National Organization of Women, which was created in 1966 with the goal of bringing women into full participation in mainstream society, enjoying all the privileges that men do. And so they didn't always have a lot of rights. Betty Friedan was the first president of NOW. Some of the accomplishments, they prohibited sex-segregated job ads. So if you were advertising a job trying to get employees, the ad might have said men only, right? If you tried to do something like that today, you could get in big trouble. The airlines used to fire a stewardess if they either A, got married or turned 32. So all of a sudden, oh, you're 32, you're fired, you can't be a stewardess anymore. So they were working on getting rid of some of those inequalities in the workforce. You can see we refuse to be second-class workers. If we can stand conducting, we can sit down driving. Women demanding equality. In the 70s, Title IX will become a law. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to the discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So this is mostly for what you see here with education is high schools or elementary schools, middle schools, and colleges that you can't discriminate one way or another. A girl or boy should be able to take any class that they want. So a girl wants to take welding, You can't discriminate that. Where in the past, maybe it was girls didn't get to take welding or woodworking or anything, where the boys couldn't take home ec and stuff like that. Under Title IX, no, you can't discriminate that way. Where we see it more often than not is with sports. And many female sports were created in the mid 70s, where they didn't exist in the 60s or 50s or 40s. You saw some female sports earlier than that, but they kind of disappear. And all of a sudden, then they're created again in the 70s with Title IX. And you see more female college sports being created as well, because it has to be equal. And so this was new. Another famous women's rights organizer was Gloria Steinem. She was a social activist, writer, editor, and lecturer for women's rights. She helped found the New York Magazine and Miss Magazine, which are still around today. There's A-Rod on the New York Magazine. Here's the 1967 Time Magazine cover, and this was a very controversial cover, and it dealt with birth control, which was new at the time. And so this was controversial. It went against some religions and things like that. And basically, this was telling a woman, "Hey, you are going to have a small. You can choose to have a small family if you want." And women started to choose this, and they started to take a little bit of control in their lives. And so this was a very controversial magazine at the time. Another very controversial subject, and still is today, is abortion. All right, and it comes up in every single election. Well, Roe versus Wade was a Supreme Court case in 1973 that legalized abortion. And so you'll hear more about this as far as women's rights, and you hear about it in every election. It comes up and it's discussed, and there's people that support it, there's people that are very much against it. But where did it get its start historically? What do you need to know about it? Roe versus Wade is the Supreme Court case. So if they were going to make abortion illegal in the United States, they would have to overturn Roe versus Wade. A famous tennis match, Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs. They called it Battle of the Sexes. Billie Jean King was a professional tennis player. Bobby Riggs challenged her and said men can beat women, and Billie Jean King ended up beating Bobby Riggs. Now there is some stories out there that Bobby Riggs made some bets against himself, so he may have lost on purpose. But there's more to that story. I think ESPN did a 30 for 30 on it, so you could look into that a little bit more. The Equal Rights Amendment was proposed in the 70s. It was an amendment to the United States Constitution designed to guarantee equal rights for women. That amendment was never passed. The states never ratified it. There are a few states short of that. So it's still out there. It still could happen. But at this point, it hasn't been passed. And then finally, you talk about women gained the right to vote back in 1920. They start to get some more freedoms. You see more and more girls taking science class, math class throughout the 70s, sports, and now women are doing everything that men are. The first female Supreme Court justice was Sandra Day O'Connor, and she was appointed by Ronald Reagan in 1981, and she served from 1981 until 2006. So that was also a very groundbreaking event in our country's history. So that's a little bit of women's rights. I'll have some video links that you can check out and follow up and learn a little bit more about this.